but the skill set that is needed for you to become a good marketer is not necessarily the same skill set for you to be a good dater. So this is why everybody's fucked. Because you have to be a great marketer.
See you later,
Right.
Cain. We're all fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of I Hate Dating Apps. I'm Daniel.
And I am Jinah.
Well, Jinah, we have a very special guest today. Want to tell us a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today?
Yeah, this guest woke up at the butt crack of dawn so that he could be on our show today. We have Cain Parish joining us from Australia. And I only know a couple of cities in Australia, Cain, and I've never heard of your city, which is what?
Well, I am from all the way down in Adelaide in South Australia, where they keep most of the country bumpkins. I suppose it's one of the biggest country towns in Adelaide, in Australia. They call it.
Well, mate. I'm just kidding. Isn't that what they say? Well, mate. I'm just kidding. I'm probably all the Australians are like rolling their eyes right now, going, "Stop, just stop."
When I try
No, you killed
when
that.
I try
That's
to
great.
imitate an Australian accent, I sound Indian. So, yeah.
Thank
Right.
you,
Well,
Cain.
Cain, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and so that our audience can know a little bit about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Cain Parish. I'm a author and educator. I specialize in relationships, dating, communication, human psychology, and I try and give people the fundamental skills they need to build better relationships and make connections with one another.
Yeah, so the reason why we're having Cain on today is because we're going to explore a topic. Today, we're going to talk about a problem that, there's frankly women and men who are deeply introverted. But in my dating life, I happen to come across a lot of men who are especially like capital I in the introvertedness. And I was fascinated to hear from Cain because you have a very similar background where you described on your website, which is cainparish.com, how you almost felt like you wasted the first half of your life from your social anxiety, from not really being able to break out of your shell, and therefore kind of squandering the opportunities to have that human connection and relationships and interaction, all the things that make life what it is. So, Cain, can you tell us about your past, why you felt like you had to use the term I kind of squandered my early years, and then eventually what you did to change that?
Yeah, of course. So this is one of the things I feel really strongly about. And when I talk about it in all of my messaging, it's important to understand that it's all incredibly individual and it depends on everyone's like wants and needs and where they want their social lives to actually go. But first and foremost, it was a really significant part of my life to watch all of the people around me have really fulfilling social experiences and come together and make all of these friendships and have all of these unique situations crop up and all of these fun things happen to them through their like social networks and through their ability to talk to each other and sort of just like connect on a very fundamental human level. And for one reason or another, whether it be like upbringing or a lack of practice or just like the situations that happened upon me when I was a lot younger, I just never really had that background. I never had that experience where I was able to develop those skills and learn how to do those sort of fundamental parts of, developing relationships and connecting with people. And so it led to me sort of getting a lot of that like FOMO, where I was missing out on things that I felt like I was, wanting or desiring or jealous of that other people were having. And it was a really, really painful experience. And I'm sure that, many people can relate to that, looking around at a social life that they're not having and something that they're not really a part of and trying to work out how they can sort of push themselves into that or join into to find a way inside that like little bubble of niche social experiences that's sort of keeping them out.
Yeah, so in my dating experience, Cain, I don't know what it is. I'm like one of the world's biggest extroverts, but for some reason, everybody, like 90% of the guys that I end up going out with or are attracted to me tend to be like introverts, like not just regular introverts, but sometimes very severe introverts. And it's really hard for me to navigate whether I'm supposed to help them get out of their shell or I just meet them where they are and we end up doing different things together because they would rather do nothing more than stay home and Netflix it out. And even sometimes
Mhm.
don't even want to go to dinner or lunch. They'll just want to like stay home and eat. Like I'll bring takeout, or whatever. And it's just so difficult for me to navigate that. Have you dated introverts? Because you're also an extrovert, right?
No, I think I'm an introvert who trained myself to be an extrovert, right? Because of my work and what I do, I learned to be more extroverted. But I think my natural tendency is to be introverted. But I think it's really interesting what Cain said. It's the fear of missing out is true for introverts because you see this whole, or you get the perception. I think it's exacerbated by the fact that we live in a social media
Right.
environment now. You think the whole world is having much more fun than you
Right.
are.
They're all going
And
out.
you think it's because you're an introvert because you're not out there. Now, I have sort of trained myself, and I think Cain will probably speak to that too because he was talking about sort of how do you develop the skills if you're an introvert to
Mhm.
function in an extroverted world, right? Because that's essentially
So you
what
never
one of the
dated an extreme introvert or an extreme
I
extrovert,
don't
or
think I did, or maybe I was completely unaware of the fact that I was. But
you're
I'm
like
growing as a human
you're
being.
like
Yeah,
boobs,
yeah,
you're good.
yeah.
Just kidding. But Kane, I
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
hear what your dating experience was like as a super socially anxious person.
Short answer, it wasn't very good. That's usually how that goes. If you're not confident or you're not able to put yourself out there, if you don't feel comfortable expressing yourself in one way, shape, or form, you're not going to meet a lot of people first and foremost. And if you do, the experience is usually going to be a little bit rough. I went on a lot of dates where it just ended up us sitting in a park somewhere, just on a bench, barely looking at each other, kind of just both awkwardly like rubbing shoulders and kind of not sure what was going on.
Ugh.
And
That
that
sounds
was a
like a
lot of young
blast.
Oh my
experiences. Yeah,
god.
I was, it was certainly something. Sat there for a lot longer than was strictly necessary until, there was something that broke that particular chain and got me to, be able to start putting myself forward a little bit and actually like having conversations and expressing myself and talking and doing all of those wonderful things that come with extroversion.
Were you able to get girlfriends being a massive introvert?
Yeah, yeah. There were probably one or two relationships I could point to where it was functional when it happened, and those were somewhat consistent, I suppose. But it wasn't like I was in control of my love life. If a
Mm.
relationship sort of happened into me, then I would try and take my best advantage of that. If I happened to find someone that was for whatever reason I'd piqued their interest, then that was fair game. But it wasn't as if I had like a strong understanding of how to actually develop a relationship and what skills were necessary to make it good, much less enjoyable for myself. It was sort of just I was letting it happen to me, and I didn't yet
Yeah.
have that agency, have that control.
That's really interesting, Kane. Actually, from that perspective, how is it for somebody who's an introvert, right? Because you're talking about sort of how do you find someone to be interested in you when you're an introvert? It's a bit of a challenge. I think dating apps, just because of your exposure to so many more people on a dating app, right? What particular challenges do you think somebody like yourself, somebody who's more of an introvert, have in a dating app? And I imagine men and women might have different experiences.
Yeah. So again, this is going to obviously depend a little bit on gender and your experience there, because obviously dating apps are a very different beast for men versus women. But typically speaking, there isn't a ton of space for most people to represent the quirks of themselves on a dating app, regardless. Like a profile is only so big. You can only have so many photos. And really, if you deviate from the standard in any significant way, you're only like harming your own match rate a lot of the time. So it's tricky to find a balance of like, how do I communicate myself and how do I actually like put some of my personality traits forward whilst not making it unappealing or strange or too off-putting in some way, shape, or form. Like a lot of those photos and stuff can be really hard to take, especially if you don't have like a thriving social life. If you don't have a group of friends that are always going out and doing
Mm.
things and like capturing photo
Right.
moments, you end up with just like a standard gallery of like selfies and stuff, which is
Yeah.
not
Well, now
not
you have AI.
ideal.
Yeah.
No,
You can ask AI, it's like, hey, can you create a photo of me with a bunch of cool people?
please don't. Please don't do what Daniel just
No,
said.
can't quite recommend that one.
So, Kate, well, what did you do when you were on dating apps as an introvert? Uh, was there a process that you went through in the beginning? Did it get better with time? Like, how did you start in dating apps as an introvert to try and get attention?
I was a lot more lucky when I started on dating apps because they were a lot more forgiving at the time. We're talking like probably,
Uh,
I want to say maybe 8 years ago, give or take. Dating apps were a lot more user friendly. They had a lot more allowances. You got a lot more attention just for sort of existing on the platform because they weren't quite as
yeah.
baked into this attention economy yet. So I got to try a lot of stuff out. I got to make a lot of profiles. I got to experiment with a lot of different photos, and I sort of treated it like any other skill that you wanted to get better at. With time, you just spend a good amount of time prepping. You do your research. You see what works and what doesn't. You do your reps. You make sure that you're tracking like what is giving particular results. Like I'd make an entirely new profile and change up like maybe 2 or 3 photos and see whether or not I got more matches or less matches. And that
Oh.
was fulfilling to me in a sense because I was like, okay, well now I understand what's working and what isn't, and what people seem to be responding to and what they're not. And oftentimes that was just simple things like, picture quality or my poses or the general sort of atmosphere that was being communicated and things like that. Just sort of simple stuff. And even if I was, still a little introverted at the time and not quite as confident and forward spoken, it was really easy because I wasn't actually interfacing with a lot of these people. I wasn't like forced to deal with a lot of them like right in front of me. There wasn't a significant amount of confrontation happening.
Well, I mean,
Mm,
that's one of the benefits of dating apps, isn't it? Is that you no longer have to go to a bar or a restaurant and get the guts to go up to somebody, which I would imagine as an introvert would be the most terrifying thing
yeah.
ever.
And you can experiment too
And you
with
can
different
experiment just like
profiles.
he
Yeah,
was
yeah,
saying,
yeah,
like he's still behind a
yeah,
screen. And so in some ways, dating apps maybe are better
yeah.
for introverts.
Actually, give us a couple of examples. So when you were going through that experimentation, what what yielded different results, right? So when you tried something, give us an example. Give it. I mean, without getting into too many details, if you don't want to, but if you want to, that's fine by us too. Give us all the dirty details.
Don't
But
tell us about the dick pics.
yeah. So what worked, and did you notice any difference in terms of what kind of women were approaching you, depending on what kind of approach you took?
Yeah, so there was, I mean, pretty much at one point or another, I've experimented with basically every like type of picture that you could think of. Like a close-up sort of selfie shot,
Mhm.
some sort of wide angle, like I'm off in the distance, some big nature thing, shirtless photos, like photos with sunglasses, photos at the beach, like whatever you name it. And I've at least experimented and tinkered with it at least once or twice. You see a lot of varied results. It'll depend if your profile communicates something, it's generally going to be picked up on. And if that happens to be that like you're fitting in with more traditional, I guess, short-term or casual expectations, you'll be approached more with that mindset. People tend to take your profile at face value and construct some sort of bias, and then they come at you with that particular bias in mind. It's really easy to, you know, it's very easy if you've got like a shirtless profile picture to assume that you're there for casual hookups and that you're only there for, pretty superficial
Yep.
stuff because
Yep.
you've
Yep.
communicated
So
yourself in that
tell
kind of
us
way.
about a casual hookup. So tell us about a casual hookup that happened from a shirtless picture.
No, no. I don't know if I want to hear about that. You do have some crazy stories though, Kane, right?
So I don't know. They never feel that crazy in the moment, and then all of a sudden, when you're telling them the next day or a couple of days later, it sort of sinks in as the words are coming out of my mouth. Hey, maybe that's like not a normal experience that happens to everybody. Some of them are pretty funny though. I do enjoy thinking about a couple of the memories.
Well, okay, so before we go into crazy stories, the point that we're trying to make with this episode is that you moved from somebody who was just like had almost no social battery to the person that you are now, to the point where now you're a relationship coach and you're a dating coach and you help other people in similar shoes kind of gain the footing that you got. How are you able to do that?
As much as human beings are incredibly complicated and we find ways to make everything just unique and nuanced and different, there are some common threads that come up with relationships, and there are skills that you can practice, and it is something you can learn to be good at. And there weren't a ton of resources for that when I first started trying to learn how to do these things. There was a lot of those typical self-help books and stuff like that, but they didn't really have some of the meat and bones that I was necessarily looking for. So I went and just consumed everything that I could. I went and took in as much information. I found as many sources as I could. I talked to as many people as I could stomach. I watched all the videos. I listened to all the podcasts. I did all of my research, and I combined all of it and synthesized it into a way that made sense in my brain. And I had some sort of a foundational model of like, hey, this is how human beings talk to one another. Hey, this is how body language works. Hey, if I want this outcome, I should communicate myself in this sort of way. And over time, you sort of start to form different theories on what might work and what doesn't. And at a certain point, it gets really scary because then you have to start practicing and you have to start actually like talking to people and putting your money where your mouth is. And so I spent the next, couple of years after that whole journey of like synthesizing information and learning new things to just testing and seeing what was working. And I would, use dating apps for that. And I'd go out and I'd meet a ton of different people and I'd sort of test out like, if I wear this outfit, does it make me look a certain way? Do I appear a certain way? If I present myself in a certain manner, do people seem more receptive to that, less receptive to that? If I try and communicate my boundaries or my values.
Can you give us an example of like, so what did you test and how did you see the differences?
So I've got like a shirt in my closet that I love dearly. It was a gift from a friend of mine in Canada. And it's a flowery sort of like Hawaiian shirt-esque, like very like thin silk kind of situation. And it's quite loud, it's a pretty significant piece. And if I wear it, I typically wear it like, very loose, not a lot of buttons with some big necklace. And it, the whole thing's very gaudy. If I go outside like that, people sort of look at me a certain way and they take notice of me in a certain way that they might not if I just went outside in a normal plain t-shirt, I can start putting things on myself or accent myself in a certain way that gives a particular impression off. And then when people meet me, they say like, oh my God, like that's a cool shirt. Or, oh my God, you must be like a confident person because you've gone and volunteered to walk outside looking like that. Like that takes some more balls than the average individual might have. And it's, it's half of the conversation is already started by the time I've even made first contact. Do you know what I mean?
Oh.
That's really interesting. Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, most introverts, I would imagine, don't want to draw any attention on themselves. So you just kind of like went out of your comfort zone and went to the other extreme end where you're like, this is what I am wearing so that I could just project, something that I do not have, which is social confidence. And then you found that it worked in your favor. That's a good experiment.
Yeah. Until you have the confidence, it's all you got to do is fake it until you make it. Like that's, the classic saying for a reason. The amount of times I'd be sort of on my way into like the nightlife part of our town wearing like some strange pants that I'd never worn before or some strange jewelry that I wasn't quite comfortable with, just sort of like sitting there drumming my fingers on myself, a little bit anxious about how people are going to perceive me. It just happened enough times that I got used to it for whatever reason.
What was the point at which you were like, because, a lot of people, they just embrace their introvertedness and then they're like, okay, so if I go out, 5 Fridays a year, I'm doing okay. What was the point at which you were like, I'm done. I'm going to change kind of who I am and how people perceive me because I want to do what? What was that, rock bottom, or maybe that's probably a negative connotation, but what was that straw that broke your camel's back?
I kind of agree with rock bottom. I think that everybody, before they want to make any actual change, and I found this in most of the clients that I deal with, even before I was a relationship coach, when I was doing more mental health focused stuff, it would be a lot of the same thing. You don't go and seek out that kind of change unless you're in a position where you really, really, really can't stomach the results you're getting anymore. If I'm at my tipping point, if I'm thinking like, oh my God, I've missed out on another party. I've seen all the pictures on like Facebook stories or Snapchat stories or whatever people use at that time or place. If I've seen all of those memories on social media and I'm not there and I'm not a part of that, for the 20th time this year, it starts to take a toll on a person. For me personally, it was
Mm.
just realizing that I was lonely and I didn't have a way of fixing that. There was something about that feeling of just like me
Mhm.
not having access to people that were a nice support network. I didn't have like consistent friendships. I didn't have the ability to find a relationship if I wanted one. And like it wasn't necessarily that I
Mm.
was absolutely going out of my gourd wanting it in that particular moment. I just realized that if I did decide that I had that desire, there wasn't a solution there for me. I didn't have an option. I didn't have a process to follow to be able to go and find those things.
There are two parts to that solution, right? One is what you're talking about, which is to sort of work on yourself, try different things, and find that confidence and find what how you can improve. In your case, like checking the patterns and stuff, which is a very scientific, way of going about it. The other is like, what are the tools that you use to make those connections? So as you're working on yourself, what do you think in this world where the majority of people nowadays meet, like for romantic, relationships or hookups or whatever you want to call it, on dating apps? How does that translate into the dating apps? Was that something that you would do differently on dating apps now that you found a little more confidence, or as you're going through that process? What would you do differently on dating apps, and what would you recommend to people to do differently on dating
And
apps?
and when you say that, I want to clarify that dating apps are one thing, right? But it's actually the date itself that
And when
is
you
the
get to the
true
date, yeah.
test of meeting a complete stranger, and then how do you talk to them for an hour to 2 hours if you're just like socially, anxious?
Yeah, the only way to do it is to just pick it apart and see which parts of that process you can find a way to improve on. If you're not matching with people, that's the first problem. If you've decided that dating apps are the way that you're going to meet people for whatever reason, as much as I think that may or may not be a good idea, like if that's your tool that you've decided on, then you got to try and make it work for you, right? And if you're not matching with people, that's part of an issue. I mean, I can't go on a date if I never get a match, if I never talk to anybody. So step one is trying to figure out how to make a better profile, how to write a better bio, how to take better pictures, how to decide what pictures are going to
Yep.
communicate you in the best light to get you the best results, right? You can't just lament the fact that whatever you're doing isn't working. You need to change something up. You need to make a different like direction for yourself. If you decide to take some more photos, whatever you have to do to make those work. If you pay a buddy to come out with a camera with you and you stage a bunch of pictures, that's what I did. That's how I did it for the first little while. I ended up getting a Bluetooth camera
Mm.
that I could set up on a tripod, and I'd take photos of myself. And there was a time where all of my Tinder photos for months and months and months had my like phone sort of subtly stashed in like one corner of the thing because I had to look at the viewfinder on my phone to take the picture. And that worked. That did better than whatever I had before that.
That's
So
brilliant. Yeah.
then you can sort of explore the other parts of that process. Are you having good conversations? Are you developing connections? Is that leading to anything? Do you have an exchange with a person that ends with a phone number or with a date or with some other expression of whatever results that you personally want? And if not, how do we fix that part of the problem? Do we need to learn how to talk to people? Do we need to be more comfortable flirting? Do we need to develop a sense of humor? Like, what part of that process is causing the struggle for you? And then how do you fix just that one microscopic element of it? Dating as a whole is
But they
so
don't know.
complicated and
That
They don't
complicated.
know
well,
their pain point,
well,
Kane.
yeah, and here's a challenge, right? Here's a challenge because I think the first part of this, and it's really interesting what Kane's saying because in the process of doing this podcast, I've been, once in a while doing some research on dating apps and what people are doing, and there was this Reddit forum where this guy actually documented his whole experience, very similar to this. He was not getting any matches, and just like Kane, he came up with a process and he started testing photos, which ones did better. And he didn't do the one that you hate of the guy, like the selfie on the with his t-shirt off in the gym
At
bathroom,
at the
like
gym or
like
with
yeah,
the fish.
really the cheesy ones, right?
Yeah.
He actually looked at the profiles, he looked at, and then he actually also used more filters to make the light better. And in a way, it's a process of advertising. If you think about it, you got to become a really good advertiser for
Yeah.
yourself,
It's
right?
marketing.
Yeah, it's marketing essentially. Yes, you get really good at marketing, and then but the skill set that is needed for you to become a good marketer is not necessarily the same skill set for you to be a good dater. So this is why everybody's fucked because like, you have to be a great marketer.
See you later,
Right.
Cain. We're all fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, think about it. So you have to be a great marketer, which is already a huge ask. I mean, Cain actually went through this whole process to become an expert. Like he had to get a PhD. Your average person has no hope. Like,
Well, what is your fucking point, Daniel? I'm trying to
I
give
just
people some
realized
hope on.
this is just impossible. No, but all joking aside, but I think this is, I mean, this is what's, I think, really useful about this podcast and this episode is giving people a, because you have to, because people are just flailing, I think, right?
Yeah,
And
they
this
are.
this can help people. Look, this is how you got to frame it. It's like, just like King said, you have to take it as like a project. Like anything that you want to get better at, you have to understand the process and get better at it, right? But then it's kind of fun. It's like, yeah, you have to become a great marketer, and then you have to become a great conversationalist, and then you have, there are a lot of process to this. But I guess, love is hard.
Yeah, well, but then also, in the path to marketing, let's say you're marketing to an introvert and
Right.
something's working,
Right.
and then you meet an extrovert,
Yeah.
and now your same marketing tactics aren't working.
That's
or
why
like
we're all
some
fucked.
girl who's gone.
That's part of the
versus somebody
calibration. That's
who's
the
like,
hard part. That's the whole skill in and of itself, is trying to work out
Calibration,
who the hell is on
exactly.
the other end of the phone.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors. Our sponsor, Take My Face Off, makes swiping off your makeup just as easy as swiping past a bad profile. Seriously, the MIDI from Take My Face Off is this adorable facial mitt that makes skin cleansing faster, easier, and more thorough than any other method I've tried. I seriously love this product. Next time you're tempted to grab a face wipe, use a MIDI instead. It's just as fast, but it's better for your skin and the planet. Get free shipping with the discount code DATING at takemyfaceoff.com.
what do you tell your clients, Cain? How do you counsel and relationship coach people with these exact same problems who are just,
All right.
they don't know what's going on, they don't know what they're doing wrong?
If you've got absolutely no direction, if there's nothing that speaks to you in terms of like, how you're going to fix this issue, here's generally speaking what I would recommend. Because this typically happens to be guys struggling with this that, find themselves stuck for these sorts of things, but this would work for girls too. You go and you take 3 to 5 new photos of yourself. You get them as well lit as possible in as nice a setting as possible. Put most of them about half to 2/3 of your body. You don't wear sunglasses. You smile where appropriate. You
Yep.
put in an animal if you can find
Yep.
one. Variety of settings. Try and include some friends if you've got them. If you don't, make some. And that should kickstart something for you, because if you've got at least a foundation where you can get a couple of matches a week, then at least you have a lifeline. You have somewhere to practice. You have some grounds to try and actually talk to people and find out what's going on and make some connections that you wouldn't have made otherwise. If you have decided that real life isn't necessarily working for you, if you can't go meet people or won't go meet people for whatever reason in a real life atmosphere, dating apps are really most of the options that we have left available to us. And you can't do anything if you're not getting matches, so you need to sort your profile out. You need to get that absolutely locked away. If you can translate some of those into Instagram photos, then even better. So like some of those social medias are essentially just business cards, if we're going to continue the marketing analogy. So yeah, you get that squared away. You try and improve yourself as much as you can. If you're not working out, start. A lot of those foundational aspects of just like making yourself a little bit more attractive, get a decent haircut, shave a little bit, make sure that everything's tucked away. Like there are these elementary check boxes that you can do to just make sure that you're not committing some sort of cardinal sin, If you've got bad breath, that's going to shoot you in the foot before you ever get to any of the more advanced elements, If you show up to the date half naked and covered in baby oil, probably not going to go super well for whatever reason, Just don't do dumb stuff.
Well, I don't know about that,
Half
King.
naked baby oil might sound good once in a while.
Hey, look, you guys
the
might have more
opposite
confidence
is
in
what
yourselves than I do.
happens with me, like pants hiked up to their chest. But then what? Okay, so that's the starting point. Then what?
Then you decide how far you want to take this particular rabbit hole. Are you super interested in being the best Tinder guy that you can feasibly be? Or are you just actually looking for a functional relationship? Because you don't have to commit all the way. You don't have to go and do this massive social transformation where you become this super big like social butterfly and be able to talk to a million people at a moment's notice. If you just want a functional relationship or to make a couple of friends, just learn how to do that. Like that's a process into of itself. You decide how far you want to run, and then we try and figure out what steps we have to take to get you there.
Give us some
Makes sense,
stories.
yeah.
Give us some stories. Success stories of clients or yourself or
Oh yeah.
So I had a female client, and she was really, really struggling with the idea of trying to find a guy that was going to take her seriously. She didn't really understand why all of her dates and all of her matches and all of her results weren't coming in the format that she wanted them. All of these guys weren't taking her super seriously. And I looked at her profile,
Sounds
and
familiar.
Mm,
she had a bunch of photos of her at nightclubs and doing shots and in these crazy compromised fun positions. And she
yeah,
looked like a really
well,
fun person. And that's not like a bad thing, She's portraying herself a certain way and people are picking up on that. It just wasn't the same as someone that, put a bunch of photos of them like in a library or in these serious positions that sort of gravitate more towards people with longer term values or longer term expectations. And I'm not saying that you have to go and reshape your entire profile, but for her, we took away some of the photos of her like blackout in a nightclub and replaced them with some more like tasteful ones, of her like going on walks or just finding some more like engaging hobbies that she might actually want to do with her prospective partner when they, came down to it. And all of a sudden people were responding better to that. It was starting off the conversation on a better foot, where the people that were matching with her, it wasn't so outrageous for her to say, hey, look, I'm only looking for a long-term relationship. Hey, I'm only in this for something serious. If you're not, that's cool too, but like, I'm not going to be the person for you. We're not going to have that conversation. And it was just easier once she had the right perspective on it and when she was portraying herself in a way that made sense with what goals she was looking for.
yeah, but then she shows up and then she's like, "What are you doing Saturday night? Are we going clubbing?" So it's like, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that.
Right.
Yeah,
Like
you are who you
it's not a
are.
one
No,
size
but
fits
also
all
people are
thing.
multifaceted, right? I think,
Well, I mean, yeah.
but we're talking about advertising. So you're advertising maybe un, unconsciously, subconsciously, you're advertising something that you're not. You're she thinks that's such a normal part of her life, going out to nightclubs and stuff, and doesn't understand what message that sends to people when she puts that on a profile,
Yeah.
right? And then she's surprised when she meets people who expect her to behave in that one dimension of who she is. And it's like, well, but I have all these other dimensions. So if you're going to advertise tequila and people show up and you offer them coffee, they're like, no, wait a second, I came here for tequila. Why are you offering me coffee? Yeah.
But you're a tequila kind of
Well,
girl,
no, but you
so
can drink tequila and have coffee. That's what I'm
yeah,
saying.
yeah.
I think that's why that's a challenge of dating apps, because you're advertising a certain way because you're trying to attract matches, and then you got to go to that next stage when you actually get to meet people. And I think that's one of the challenges of the world we live in today with dating apps. In the past, to what Keynes was saying earlier, like how you have to advertise yourself and get better at it to get more matches, if that's what you want, right? Before dating apps, you could meet somebody at church or somebody at a softball game, and then you didn't have to necessarily put your best foot forward because you had a context where people would get to meet you and know a little bit more
And get
about
to
you.
know
Yeah.
you.
So this particular woman, for example, if you had not met her at a nightclub and you met her, for all we know, she goes to church on Sundays, right? And then you might think, oh, this is a perfect girl for me. And then once in a while, she goes out to nightclubs, but she thinks I'm going to put my happy-go-lucky self out there, and she doesn't understand that that's what she's portraying, right? And that's the difficulty of all of this, I think.
Yeah, you bring a little self-awareness to
Yeah,
something
yeah.
that they're just not
Mhm.
seeing.
Well, the one thing that I do want to say with all of this is that dating advice and practicing dating are two different things. It's the weirdest part of like most subjective fields where you talk about things in such broad terms. Like we say that, if I have a very serious profile, I'm going to get serious matches. Like that's not 100% true. You get some people that are coming in still looking to push your boundaries, still looking to, conflict with what you've decided that you want out of that situation. And all we can do is try and shift the odds so that they're more appropriately in your favor, Like if you're the most attractive person in the world and all of your photos are from nightclubs, doing shots, doing weird things and, having fun and partying, you'll still probably across like 1,000 matches find like 2 or 3 guys that are are very much interested in something long term, and like don't have any of those values that have been in your profile just because of like numbers, essentially. If we're just like spinning the lottery every single time, all we're doing is trying to improve our odds. It's never as consistently input output as we might like it to be. I suppose that's the hard part.
And then finally, do you have some stories about yourself, your clients? I know you have some crazy ones.
So probably, I mean, the one that just jumps out at me that I find so just robustly funny was when I spent a good like 2 or 3 days on, I think it was Hinge. And I matched with this girl. She was way out of my league. I was like super amazed that she even gave me the time of day. It was great. I was having the time of my life. We talked for, a while. She was super receptive, really warm, really friendly, really lovely. And we arranged like a time to meet and like go out for a drink and stuff like that. And I get to the bar that we're supposed to meet at, and I'm standing just on the side of the road. And I'm sort of looking around, seeing like, oh, which is she going to walk from a particular direction? And I look over my shoulder and I see my ex-girlfriend sort of walking down the street.
Oh, no.
And this was like a bad ex. And I'm like not looking forward to like, this is not a, happy run-in that I'm looking for here. I'm like, oh my God, if this is just a coincidence, like this is awful, And I try and duck down like a little corner of an alleyway or something like that. And I hear her like yell my name out from behind me. And I sort of, begrudgingly stalked back to the street where she was standing. And it turned out I'd been catfished. It turned out my ex-girlfriend had decided to make a profile with someone that was just my type, knowing all of the things that I like and didn't like, and had decided to, just straight up catfish me and decided that she wanted my attention for whatever reason.
What?
Yeah, it was crazy.
Okay. Fucked up. That is a crazy ex-girlfriend. Thank God you're
See?
not with her anymore.
That's why we hate dating apps.
Well, I mean, I'm assuming he did. Oh, I mean, he got catfished on a dating app. Yeah.
Gives tools to crazy exes to catfish you.
What the fuck was her motive? Why was she doing that?
I just wasn't ready to let go yet. Some people just need something to hang on to. And, we talked it out for a little bit, and we, had a conversation about why she felt the need to do that in the first place. And look, we're in a much like better place individually now. I'm pretty sure she's a better person, and so am I. So it all had a happy ending, I suppose. It was just probably an unconventional method on her part, if I had to put a name to it.
Very unconventional. But
Okay.
interesting, though.
Yeah. Makes for a story that you're going to tell your grandkids later on in life.
Oh, yeah.
And Cain is happily in a relationship now. So glad that your evolution has brought you to, would you say, a better place?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's I wouldn't feel comfortable giving advice if I didn't somehow at least follow it a little bit myself. And I try and, use some of the lessons from my relationship, put back into what I teach other people, and find those skills like constantly improving and stuff like that. So yeah. Particularly like polyamory and stuff has been really interesting to experiment with. I've been on and off with like different relationship styles my whole life, but being in a non-monogamous, I always struggle with that word, relationship gives you so many interesting like challenges and puts you in so many interesting positions that you never think you're going to be in. And I love that. I love that ability to challenge myself in different ways and learn things that I wouldn't probably with just a normal like traditional relationship.
What did you say? I mean, obviously it's not very simple. You went through a whole journey, but if there is one thought that you could distill it down to, what's the secret to getting to that place where you feel more comfortable in your relationship life? What do you think was the key for you?
I think it's a matter of intention and a matter of having a goal and understanding what your goal is and how you're going to try and make steps towards it. Because, you can start on this journey and run around in circles and chase your tail all day long, and you probably might get somewhere. Practice does help on anything, but the best way to make something of yourself in a social environment is to pick something that you want to improve on or an outcome that you want to create for yourself and work backwards from that and find out, if it's becoming really popular on dating apps, what do I need? Like, how do I engineer a good profile? And then just work backwards from there. Like, how do I take a good photo? What is a good photo? What photos do I need? How do I go and get them? Like, if you have an intended outcome, if you have something that you're working towards, you can always work backwards from there and find a way to it. But if you don't know where you're going, then yeah, a lack of direction always sucks.
That's a good point. Intention.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Well,
work backwards from there.
I mean, if easier said than done.
True.
But yeah, how do you engineer something that only you can engineer, right?
Right.
So you're right. Set an intention, go
Right.
for it, break it down,
Yeah.
put the puzzle pieces together.
Yeah. None of this is easy, by the way.
Yeah.
that's
well,
why we have a podcast.
yeah, and that's why Cain is a
Right,
coach. Because people need
exactly.
help.
Yeah,
So Cain,
people-
how do people find you?
Easiest way is through my website, cainparish.com. That's CAIN parish, like the church.com. Or Instagram is usually my other main platform. Instagram /Cain Parish. It's all pretty stock standard.
All right.
Right.
Well, thanks for joining us all the way from down under.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Cain. Well, this has been another episode of I Hate Dating Apps,
You can't love with them.
and you can love without them.
Take care.
I hate dating apps.
Hey, app daters and haters, tell us your dating app experience, and we just might bring you on as a guest for future episodes. Head to ihatedatingapps.com and click on the big yellow Tell Us Your Story button. You can't miss it. We've got a lot of fun content on our social channels, so please follow us at I Hate Dating Apps on Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. And on Instagram, we're at I Hate Dating Apps Pod. And don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast.